Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Carolyn Talks. This is a podcast YouTube channel where I, your host, Carolyn Hines, film critic and journalist, speak to film creators around the world about their work, the industry, and what inspires them. And today, this is one of my special episodes for South by Southwest. Yes, I just finished Sundance, and now I'm doing South by Southwest Film Festival, and I'm speaking with filmmaker and writer Caroline Fioratti to talk about her film, My Drywall Cocoon, and with actress Mari Oliveira to talk about her character, Luana, in the film. So this film, My Drywall Cocoon, this is something I say, but it's true. I had no idea what to expect from this film. I read the synopsis, and it's about this 17-year-old girl, Virginia, who has a birthday party, and something tragically goes wrong throughout this birthday party, and it turned from a day of celebration to a day of mourning. And it's very tragic, but it's also very sad. And I think what you do with this film is you talk a bit, you think a lot about Brazilian society and like the sexism, misogyny, violence, as well as colorism and racism. And we'll definitely get into all of that. But as usual, I like my guests to say a bit about themselves first. So we'll begin with Caroline, and then we'll go to Mari. So Caroline, tell us a bit about yourself. How did you become a filmmaker and a writer? Because I know this is your third feature film, but it's your first internationally released feature film, correct?
Yes, it's correct. First of all, I wanted to thank you to be here and be able to talk to your audience. We are very happy because that's a very personal film to me, and it's my first personal, intimate, independent film. The first one I have the opportunity to write, direct, and co-produced, and you asked me when I decided to be a filmmaker, and it was when I was a teenager. So I believe that movie, it was one that I wanted to do since that time, since when I was 15 years old, and now I'm 37. So it's been a while. And when we do a movie like that is very intimate, we are very anxious about being selected to some festival that we can show to the world and talk about the issues we bring. And I think this one, we are very happy because of that, because South by Southwest is a festival that talk to the youth, talk to very great and very great public, and we are going to have that chance to discuss these issues that, as you said, go from Brazilian society to the new generations.
And for you, Mari, talk a bit about yourself. How did you become an actress, and you started working with Caroline for this film? Because your character, she goes through quite a bit in this film, but talk a bit about how you became an actress first.
So, hi, thank you so much for having us. We're very happy with this movie. I became an actress. Actually, I was a dancer for 10 years of my life until someone came to me and said, you got something, you should do acting or something like that. And then I started working and never stopped. I went to a lot of festivals. I started with Filme Play from Anitta Rocha da Silveira in the Venice Festival. And then in the 2021, we went to the Cannes Festival with Medusa, also from Anitta Rocha da Silveira. And here I am. I never stopped working, and I'm very happy with that. That's my life, and I'm so passionate about it. And with Caroline, I don't remember. I think there was a test. Someone called me, and then I can't remember, actually. I think it was a test, and we were knowing each other, and we've been through 2 phases, right? And then it was me.
I have watched Mari in her first feature, and I was very impressed with her acting and how natural she was on scene. So when she came to do the test, I was already very happy that she was willing to try the character.
Okay, so I just want to ask you, so sometimes if you see me looking down, it's because I'm just looking at my notes on my phone. So I just wanted to let you know. Okay, so you talked about the test and the audition. Can you talk about about Mari's audition for Luana? What was it you were looking for in Luana as a character? And then what was it about Mari that she had that you said, okay, this is who I see Luana as?
I believe for all the actors, when I'm trying to select them, I always think actors that can lend a little bit of themselves to the character, you know, because I really want to have like a very sincere acting, you know, because I believe it can connect better to the audience. And I could see that in Mari. She was very sincere. She was very open. And she has like a kind of acting that I like, that is very subtle, you know, but at the same time, her eyes say a lot. And I think that's precious. And she's also another thing that I always look for. She's a very good partner, because we need to have like this partnership collaboration to create together. And it was great when I saw her test, her audition. I believe I didn't have any doubts at the time I saw I show people and I say, oh, I believe it's her.
And
Can
go
I
ahead,
say
Mari.
something I just thought now? I think there's something that you saw on me that I didn't know. It's that Luana has a thing that is a confidence, but it's actually not. And I think I feel a little bit like that, because it's something that you need to have, because of the world and because of what I look like. So you have to be confident. And I think Luana is that person, but deep down she's not. And I think that's where we need each other, me and the character. I never thought about that. I just thought.
Yeah, that's the thing about I think not only about Luana, but I think about this film in general. Like all of the characters on the exterior, on the outside, they look like they have everything together. You know, like they're living in this high class condominium, which means they have money. Like this is a big party, and like they're you can tell like the film is very interior in that it takes place within just the walls of this condominium. So we don't get to see their lives outside, but you get the sense that these are people who are very who put on a lot of performances when they go outside. You know, they want to impress everyone around them. They want to impress, like they want to impress themselves, and they even want to impress their closest friends. Like even for like in particular, the characters of Luana and Virginia, played by Bella Piero, like they are in competition to me. I saw them as being constantly in competition with each other. Like they're supposed to be best friends, but me being like not only being female, but I went to an all-girls secondary school back home in Barbados. So I know how girls can be very catty and very mean. Like girls, I think a lot of people don't understand, unless who are surrounded by girls, especially teenage girls, don't understand how vicious teenage girls can be. And I saw that in Luana and Virginia. Like they know exactly where to hit each other to hurt, you know, but they also know how to build each other up. So I want both of you not to talk about these particular characters, because to me the film is about a lot about relationships between mother and daughter, which is Virginia and her mother and Patricia, but then also the relationship between Luana and Virginia. Like they are the two biggest relationships, because everything revolves around these girls. And they have this it's very heartbreaking to see, because like to me, I think one of the most painful experiences I've ever had is when I've had breakups with friends. You know, like people don't think like, oh, you can have a breakup with a friend. Like, yeah, you do. Like you have breakups with your best friends, with female friends. And I saw that in this film. So I want you, Caroline, to talk about constructing these female relationships in this film, and then we'll talk about the relationship between Virginia and Luana.
It's interesting that you said that, because for me, when I was a teenager, was also a big problem too. I think I have more suffering when I have a fight with my friends, my best friends, than with a guy. And what I believe that we are fighting against, but also it's very common that we have our friends that it is our security, but also it is our pain. And because we are constantly trying to show off a way of life, a way of living our bodies and whatever. And we think we are against someone, against something. And what I think about the two characters, Mari and Bellas, is that they are very friend. They truly are very friend. They want to live together in this other city outside, because there's also this thing they dream of, to be outside those walls. Because Brazil, I can talk that later, we have a lot of walls that separates the classes, and they are trying to find a way out, but they can't, because of the parents, because of how society want to treat them as a higher class, and they need each other to be strong. But they are also they think they need to be against each other also, to have a little bit of more strength, inner strength. And what I see, I don't want to give answers. I want to leave more questions. We don't know if they like each other. They might like, but we don't know if they are provoking each other too. And I think we don't have to have that answer, because nowadays we know our sexuality can be fluid. We can have relationships that are affectionate and sexual at the same time, but not always we know how to deal with that. And I think they are navigating these doubts together. And sometimes, so we actually don't know if they are, and I don't want to have the answer that they are fighting because both of them, like Nicholas, they are fighting, not fighting, but they have this provoking state because they are jealous of each other individually, or if they like each other and they don't know how to demonstrate that. So I believe I try to leave that in the air.
And for you, Mari, how did you read the relationship? Like when you when you got the script and like you were testing for this character, you're auditioning for her, but then when you got the script, what was it about Luana that you were like you said, like you didn't even think about the confidence, about how she kind of like puts on a facade of confidence until Caroline mentioned it just now. But if you didn't pick up on the confidence during audition and even during filming, what was it in Luana that you said, this is a character I would like to play, but also perhaps that you saw within yourself?
I think the main thing is this thing about the confidence, because I think we look a lot like each other as especially about here in Brazil, as a Black woman, the thing about being raised by a white family is a very hard thing, because you don't know yourself. You don't see yourself in another person. You don't know how to look the best version of yourself. You don't have a lot of persons to look up to. And Luana is this person. And I think I was that person too, especially when I was a teenager, because I was raised by my white part of the family. And that brings me a lot of less of confidence in all my teenager life. And I'm still dealing with that. So that was a thing. And I also felt a lot, I felt protected by Caroline and by this director that is a woman. I think it was another time of my life. I wouldn't take this part, but I felt protected by her. And I remember I said to myself, I think it's time to deal with that, because she has that sexual thing that is a problem for me, that I wouldn't want to talk about if it was another person, if it was written by another person. But I know I was with a good cast that support me a lot. And I was with a good director. So I was like, okay, I think it's time to talk about it, to see this with me as an actress and to use that for a character.
And I think that's the thing about this films like this, not only My Drywall Cocoon, but also films that speak a lot to female experiences, especially young female experiences, whether it's about discovering sexuality or relationships with mothers and best friends, and even with the males in their life, like their fathers, their friends, or their boyfriends, is a lot of, I think the important thing usually for these kind of films is like when not only is that the director is female, but also the writer is female. Like for you, Caroline, you wrote this film and you directed it. So like for a film like this, like even if it was written by a woman, and if it but directed by a man, it would be very different. You know, like you can tell when a writer of a film is female, but and the director is male, and the male directors don't get how women interact with each other. Like there's very few male directors that I know of that actually can direct female characters very well or write them very well. Like one of my favorite directors is Park Chan-wook, and one of the reasons I like him as a director and as a writer is that he when you watch his films, like you can tell that he understands women and that he listens to women, and usually that's because like his co-writer for almost all of his films is a woman. And he gives her a lot of, and she has most of the input in the storylines and how they're portraying the female characters. But then when you look, especially for a lot of Western male directors, they don't understand women, you know, they don't understand girls, you know, they look at it, and you can tell when they don't listen to the women in their lives. You can tell when they don't understand or pay attention to the, like even if they have daughters or nieces or grandmothers or sisters or whatever, they don't pay attention, and it comes through in the films. And for a film like this, like you're saying, Mari, like you had to feel protected on set. You know, you have to feel protected by the director, and to know that if you don't feel comfortable, that the director is going to listen to you, right? Especially for the characters of Luana, like she does, like there's some scenes that could take people aback. Like there's the scene of cutting when she starts to cut. But then also there's her this scene with Virginia, where it's like it's almost like they're exploring their sexuality. They're like, are we sexually attracted to each other, you know, or is this just a version of their jealousy, you know? Because there are people that say, oh, they're queer or they're lesbian or whatever. But for me, I kind of read it as like more about asserting dominance. I didn't see it really as being a sexual experience. I saw it more as a dominant, as a way for both of them to assert dominance over each other, because they're so struggling in the jealousy in the relationship, you know, like, because that scene I thought was very interesting. It happens right after they're like discussing going to this is it Floriopolis, and they're like, and Luana isn't listening to Virginia. Virginia is saying, I want to go with you, but my mom says I can't, you know. And Luana isn't understanding that, like, Virginia might be a rebellious teen, quote unquote, but she still pays attention to her mother. She still listens. But Luana doesn't get that. So I thought that scene was really interesting to come right after that discussion. And not only that, I thought it was really interesting where Mari puts on the bikini that she gifted Virginia. And I was like, you're going to go put on this bathing suit that you gifted this girl for her birthday, and you're putting it on. What? And I thought that for me was, I'm like, I have a twin sister, and we were 39 years old, we still squabble, we still fight about wearing each other's clothes. So when I saw Luana putting on the baby suit, I was just like, girl, I'm like, you got some animosity going on up in there. So I want you, Carol, for you, Mari, to talk about this, because, and I think that's where a lot of nuances from, especially male directors, even male audiences, they're not going to catch the nuances of a scene like that. Like how that one scene says so much about their dynamic as friends and as girls. I'm like, you putting on this other girl's bathing suit and like having this whole intense discussion, but you're just like, oh, like, and they're talking about body image and that kind of stuff. And like that scene said so much to me. So Carolyn, when we talk about that scene, there's a lot of scenes we're going to discuss, but for that one is one of my favorite scenes, because they're just like layers upon layers. And
and that's wonderful when we have like great actors like Mari and Bella that could contribute to make this discussion really real and show these layers, because the idea is all of them are not secure with their own lives, in the sense that Mari's character, Luana, she's trying to find a place to herself, because not like Virginia, that supposedly has a structured family, watching from outside. Luana doesn't. And the condom with this little organism, this microcosm that they live, know that. And for her, it's difficult because she has to be her mother's mother, because her mother has a depression that is for a long time. And that way we see that Luana is trying to find in Virginia's family a place to herself too. You know, she finds in Virginia's maids, she's trying to find some affection, and that's why she talks about her father and she makes stories about her father, because she wants to believe in that stories. And so going to this other city to study for Luana, it really is a matter of life and death. She needs to get out. And when Virginia tells her, no, I can't go with you, it's a betrayal. It's a very great betrayal to her. And when she puts the bikini, for me, it's a symbol that I wanna, because I study psychoanalysis, and I was studying psychoanalysis at the time. And so for me, there's a lot of symbolism. She's putting her bikini
Virginia,
that she gave to Virginia, so they can accomplish that dream, or going to this beach city that has like this university, and Virginia can't go. So okay, so now I'm gonna steal this bikini from you, because you don't deserve that bikini. You don't deserve that place that I'm trying to share with you, my dream that I'm trying to share with you. So that's the symbolism. At the same time, there is all this discussion about body image that for us women, it's something that we are always dealing with.
And there's a thing about this scene, I love it too. And going back to the thing about competition, you were talking about at the beginning. I just watched the movie for the first time yesterday, and there's a thing that came to me in the scene that was, as a teenager, everything hurts so much, and there's a thing that you know things, but I know better. Your life sucks, but mine sucks harder. You know, your mom is boring. My mom can't even take a shower alone. So they are competing all the time. And there's a thing about sex that is that they have so much intimacy that I think that bumps into that thing about sex, that the woman that I think there's a thing about these two girls that they look up for each other. I mean, they take care of each other and they love each other. And especially because they love each other, that things hurts most, you know? So I was just thinking about that thing about competition that you were talking about at the beginning. And this scene for me is the perfect image of the teenage things and how we are always competing with each other and how everything hurts so much, but my things always hurt most.
Yeah, no, it's true. There's something I used to say all the time, and so I remember I used to have arguments with my mom all the time about this, and even with my sister. And like what you were saying, Mari, where there are people in pain, and like everyone has their own traumatic experiences or their own painful experiences, and people may know or may have an idea, but they're not you, so they can't experience it. And I always say, don't try to make my mountain your molehill. Meaning, don't it may seem like a molehill to you, but this is my mountain. You know, this is a challenge that I have to go over. This is something that's big to me, because there are people who will try to diminish other people's pains, you know, or they're trying to compete with pain. Like there's some people say it's like oppression Olympics, but it's like you're saying, Mari, you're having a traumatic experience, but my experience is more traumatic. Like, you know, like Virginia looks like all and the thing is like, as well as Luana knows Virginia, she still doesn't know Virginia as well as she thinks she does. You know, she still she doesn't understand that Virginia's putting on a facade. You know, like there's something, and it was so, and I like as a film progressed, it just made me want to hug Virginia and hug both of these girls. Where Virginia is prepping for this party, she has the conversation with Patricia. and there's these marks that are on her shoulder. It just looks like a little mole at first. And then as the night progresses and as things start to go wrong, the marks get bigger and bigger. They turn from a little mark to a scratch to like a gray. And then they just become these big, open, festering wounds all over her shoulders and her chest. And it kind of matches up with what happens with Luana later on in the film. But I thought, to me, it kind of like symbolized not only the relationship between Luana and Virginia, where Luana thinks she knows everything about Virginia, but also how the people around Virginia doesn't pay her enough attention. You know, like they're just seeing this girl who looks like she has everything put together. Her mother is, her mother to me seems like someone who suffers from anxiety, where the smallest thing is going to set her off, you know? And so Virginia has to try to put on this appearance of like the perfect teenage daughter for her mother and her father, but she has these wounds. And for the audience, they're visible for the audience, you know, like we, the audience, can see, but the people in the party, the people around her can't see them. And it broke my heart how, as the film progresses, I'm like, no one ever says anything about these bruises. No one mentions them. And the same thing happens with Luana when she starts cutting her thighs and she has on these shorts. And I'm like, there's no way that no one can't see these marks on her skin, but they get ignored. No one mentions them. And the only marks in the film that I actually thought that got mentioned, and this is one that I was upset about it, but I understood where you're going, Carolina, is I'm looking at is the character of Nicholas, played by Michelle Joelas, and he has bruises on his body, and this is from his own person, his father abusing him. But the thing is, like, people can see these bruises. His bruises are remarked upon, but the bruises that the girls have, the scars the girls have, no one remarks on that. No one brings them up. So talk about that, because that was one of the heaviest things about the film for me, how like these girls are in visible pain and no one is acknowledging it. Not even each other. Like they aren't even saying anything about it for themselves.
Virginia's wounds, they were probably intentionally not visible to the others. It's a metaphor to her internal pain. But what I wanted, it's exactly that you are saying, that the audience feels like, why no one is commenting about her wounds? Because they are not seen, and that's the problem. No one is seeing her wounds, but the other characters, and that's also intentionally, they have wounds that they are physically, they're physical. So Luana has cut herself. She cuts herself. She has this how do you say that? These scars.
Scars,
yeah, from when she's cutting herself. The mother, you know, Patricia, she has like wrestling done here, because when her husband slaps her, so, and it's getting worse by the time too. And Nicholas has these wounds there from his father. And that's because it's something most of the people say, but isn't that something that we already are over it? No, here in Brazil, and we saw that in this past government, how much the LGBT community was again much more hurt and persecuted, starting at home. Because we had like this new this toxic masculinity that came again very strong with the last government, because many men they felt they have like the power again, because they are resonating the former president that we have to beat your gay son. You have to treat women like that. And tons of racist stuff, like black women are like that. And so the ex-president, the former president, used to say that. And it's scary how a great part of the society was feeling free to say that too. So when I was showing Nicola's father, he represents that. He represents that upper class that felt free to speak their misogynist, racist, homophobia. So each of them have like some scars, some wound, but Virginia has something that inner, that internal, and that's something I talk about, how we need to look for that. We don't know. Sometimes people are hiding that, but that's something that it's growing to a point that the person cannot escape anymore.
For you, Mari, like because what Luana is going through, like a lot of it comes from, I think, stemming from guilt. Like she feels this guilt with what happens to Virginia, and she thinks that she's the one who caused Virginia's death because of the pills. And it's not only, I think, for her when she begins cutting, because cutting is a physical sign of psychological trauma. Like a lot of people who do begin cutting do it as they need, from what I've read and from like interviews and stuff that I've watched, they do it because they need a physical release. Like and it's not that they take joy from the cutting, but like this is like a moment of release for them, but it's also a way of inflicting punishment on themselves. And I see that in Luana, like she's punishing herself for what happened to Virginia, and she's also, I think, punishing herself because of her mother's situation, because she hates her mother. She loves her mother, but she also hates her because she's just a teenager. She's a child, and she's responsible for looking after her mother. Like you said, like she's her mother's mother, you know? And so she has all of this pressure of a teenager being the only person around her mom who has to look after her mom. She has to bathe her, feed her, make sure she takes her medication. So she has all of that stress, all of that trauma. But then it's discovered, stuff is, I'm not going to say completely, but stuff is discovered about Nicholas. And I thought the points where we, the audience, are showing where she's cutting herself are very interesting because they involve Nicholas as well, because she sees things that Nicholas does. So for you, like playing this character and playing for these are traumatic scenes. Like how do you as an actress process not only the emotions of Luana, but also for what she's doing to herself? Because as an actress, like I know I always ask actors and actresses this, because like how do you not internalize these particular aspects of the character? Like how do you go through preparing for a scene like that, and then like what are the discussions you and Caroline had for these particular scenes?
Well, thank God. I think I'm a very good person to leave things in the room, in the rehearsal room. And the main thing was we really were in that safe space. Oh, I think just remembered there was a very responsible thing that Caroline did about the movie. That was, for the first time in my life, we had a psychologist while in the whole process, and that never happened in my life. And I've been through movies, girl, that was like really hard to do, but and that was the first time we had that support. So I think that there was this safe place where we can let things there. Here's this place where I feel pain, where I feel vulnerable, and it's okay to feel like that in this space. When I leave this place, I'm not alone. I have this good cast, and I have this good crew that is with me, and I have this psychologist that is responsible for me just for this process. So when we left the room, we went to the psychologist for the first time, and I said a phrase in this place, the psychologist. Everyone was like, yes, please talk about it. Let's talk about it. It's hurting in everyone. Let's talk about it. So it was a very special place because we were hurting each other for these characters, but we were also healing together. And I think that was a very responsible way to do things, because usually you hurt yourself and you go home and you deal with that later. But no, there was a very responsible process. And for me, there's a thing about Luana that is, I want to feel something more painful than this inside thing. So that's why the leave for the physical thing. That was the thing I found for myself to explain why she's hurting herself, why it's hurting so much. And I think that in her life, there's a thing about the mom, there's a thing about the her body and how these old men in the condominium looking at her and this thing is a very hurtful thing. And there's a thing with the friends. I think that there's a platonic thing with Nicholas, or just for the possibility of someone like her, and this relationship of both of them is something that you look up to. There's a lot of hurtful things, but I think it's sad about the process. It was a very responsible thing. I wasn't left alone crying in the streets. I had support all the time, and it was a very easy thing to do.
Mm. And how important was that for you, Caroline? Like you mentioned, psychologists, and like even for there's, like I had mentioned before, one of my favorite directors is Park Chan-wook, and one of the other reasons I really like him is he has intimacy coordinators on his films. Like one of the films he did, The Handmaid's Tale, he was one of the first, I think, or he was perhaps the first South Korean director who had an intimacy coordinator on his set. And the reason he had an intimacy coordinator is because like there are scenes like in the like what you have in your film where you have these two characters who are engaging not only in sexually intense situations but also emotionally intense situations. And I'm so happy to hear that you had a psychologist on set, because not only I think because of what was happening, but also the majority of your cast is very young, you know, like most of these characters are teenagers, or you know, are young adults. I'm so happy to hear that you had that. So for you in particular, not only having it for the the traumatic scenes that the characters are playing, but you mentioned, and this is where I want to get into this too, because like this is something that also hits close home for me too, is the racism and the misogyny that is exhibited in this film, and not only in the film, but and I know Brazil society is very colorist and is very anti-Black and very racist, and a lot of people who aren't familiar with Brazilian society, or just like, you know, are know people from Brazil. Like I know people who are Brazilian, and I know a little bit about the culture, and I know about the colorism there and the racism there. And your film, you don't make it explicit, which I think is important. Like it's not explicit, but if you read between the lines, if you see it, like you like. Me being a dark-skinned Black woman, I've encountered racism, I've encountered anti-Blackness, I've encountered colorism, and like Luana is the darkest person in the entire cast in the film, right? There's her, and then there's the other, there's the maid, Silma, and I think is very subtle how you have like one is the housekeeper, who's the housekeeper for Virginia and Patricia. And then you have Luana, who is struggling with her place in this group, you know, in this society. Like she doesn't live in the condominium, you know, she lives at home with her mom. She's like financially not secure, but she's still, again, putting on this facade. And like, how do I say this? Like when you add, because you're white, but like you're white and you're dealing with situations like you aren't intimately familiar with colorism. You aren't intimately familiar with racism in the fact that you haven't had to experience it. But listening to Mari, and of course, Mari being Black, she understands that aspect of the film. She understands what Luana is going through. And like from just the things that Luana says in the film, like you can tell that she's struggling with the confidence of being as a black girl in this society, you know, not only in this condominium, but just in Brazilian society as well. And like for you, like when you were writing the script and when you were deciding, this is like just like the wounds on Virginia, you wanted to make it subtle, you know, but it still has to be present for the audience to pick up on it. So like how, when you were writing Luana's character and Silmara's character, when you said, I want to make this about racism, I want to make this about colorism in Brazilian society and the classism. How did you go about structuring that in the film so that you know, like you're saying, I as a white woman, I'm writing about this, but I still have to make sure that I'm doing my due diligence as the creator?
I'll start with this question. For me, I'm white. I grew up in a middle class family. I grew up in a condom life, because it was not like it is today. But I grew up in a private school with friends that live in condoms, not as high upper class, how they are today, like this one, but also they have walls, and you cannot see in those places Black kids, Black teenagers, and the only Black people you see, they were people who are working for school, or working at your home, or working on those condoms. Because I grew up in a very in a school that it's progressive and think about these issues, I was questioning that when I was a teenager also. I know my friends, most of my friends weren't, but I was. And then I realized, we know, but today it's different. But in that time, when we talk about, we used to talk in a different way. I had a housekeeper who grew up with me, who was Black. And my family was to say, oh, she's like the family. She's not. We know that. And when I was in film school, I knew her daughter, who was the same age that I was, also loved films, but she didn't have this opportunity to go to film school like I did. She was working already. And what did she do? She started being extra in film sets, which we know there are the lowest payments. And that was something that really was bothering me. But as a white woman, it's difficult to me to talk from a place that it's not superficial. So what I did was I had like a very good friend, amazing filmmaker. Her name is also Carol. and she grew up with me. She was like, she had like a scholarship to the same school that I had today. She's great filmmaker, one of the voices of Black cinema in Brazil. And she collaborated with me in the script. She was one of the people who would make script doctoring for the film, looking to this at this place. Because she had this living experience too, besides being a sociologist, a filmmaker who has all the tools to do the script doctor. She's also was the light color skin Black woman, also bisexual, now lesbian, that grew up in a microcosm of the private school, all white. And so we talk a lot about that. And she gave me ways, was indicating me what kind of things Mari's character could say, what kind of pain she would have in that place. And then when I was doing the cast, talking to Mari, and she was very generous to talk about her life, and she was sharing to me that her experience was very close to Luana's experience. So we used to talk a lot about that, because I need to listen. I need to learn. It's not Mari's responsibility to teach me. No, we gotta go after to learn. But she was very generous to share her living with me. And so we are putting all this very real experiences in the movie. And it is how it is in Brazilian society to the day. If you go to these buildings, we were shooting in a real complex. You don't see Black kids, you don't see Black teenagers, Black families. You only see Black workers, and they come from the service entrance and they go out from the service entrance like they cannot show they are there, and that hurts a lot when we are in a society that we want to change. We want to be changed. And so that's why, and I thought it was important to talk about, because I think it makes more obvious to the audience, it's a white place. It's a white place, and that's not healthy. We gotta do something. So that was the intention. And regarding the other question that it's about the set process and to work with psychologists, I have been showing the scripts, also doing some script doctoring with psychiatrists, psychologists, great minds from Brazilian Academy that think about those issues, especially with youth. And so they were there in the script, they were in the set, and they were in the cutting and the montage process. So I never, because I know I need to be responsible to talk about these issues, and I wanted to have more than one vision about this. So I probably had like some 5-7 psychologists working and talking about the film and giving me feedback, that was listening and trying to make the best possible to treat the issue. And as a director that worked professionally like 10 years in this business, I saw a lot of toxic things happening in set. I saw a lot of misogyny in set. I saw a lot of things that I don't like and that I want to change. So when I have the opportunity to have my process, a film that it's independent, that I have the responsibility to care about those lives who are there, I want to care in a right way, because I might be doing something to them, I don't know, in the rehearsal room or in the set that might hurt them. And they need to have someone to talk about that. And they have to feel secure to say, I don't like what Carol did, without being fear. So I think that was also the proposition, having a psychology on the set, on the process, because she was there. If they want to call, they could call. I know nowadays, I guess 1 year from now in Brazil, we have like intimate coordinators. We are having like this person from mostly the streamings that you can contact and talk about issues that you might have. But I thought we could do that in independent cinema too. And because they talked to me, because when we start rehearsal, they were talking about things that we thought together. Maybe it's good to have someone they can access. And then I told the crew too, there is this person, you guys can also access this person and talk to this person if you want to. And it was a great experience.
No, I'm honestly so glad to hear that, especially I think it should be a standard across the board for film, just like internationally, but especially for films like this, which does deal with a lot of very heavy topics. Like the thing about the film, and this, I don't think this would be considered a spoiler, because like I just said at the beginning, like it kind of leaves things open for interpretation for the audience. And because even for the characters at the end, they still don't even really know what happened to Virginia. Like Luana still doesn't know if Virginia committed suicide, if it was an accidental overdose. We don't know. And I think that's the thing about situations like this, because unfortunately, there's a lot of people who, especially for young people and young women who die, and like sadly we don't know if they do die from an accidental overdose, if it was intentional or not, and like for a film like this, I think you did a fantastic job tackling a whole bunch of topics and you tied them around this one situation, because we've talked about the classism, we've talked about the racism and colorism, and also about the jealousy and the female relationships. But the other thing about this film is the misogyny, and you're talking about the toxic masculinity that's prevalent everywhere. It's not only just in Brazilian society, it's like everywhere. And and it's so sad that me as a woman and coming from the Caribbean and then living here, like I'm so familiar with the behavior that is exhibited by the male characters in this film. Not only the older generation, but the younger ones too, because young men, young teenage men, young men can be extremely misogynistic and extremely violent, and there's something that is very similar in and I thought it was kind of interesting, and they're similar but kind of desperate in like Luana and Nicholas, where they push people's boundaries. They don't know how to back off. Like, they like they don't know when to stop. Like, people have to keep saying stop, 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 and they don't listen. But it's for two different reasons. I think for Luana, it's like she wants attention and she's feeling like she doesn't belong. So she pushes people's buttons so she can get them to look at her. Whereas for Nicholas, he pushes people's buttons because he likes to see fear. He likes to see them be uncomfortable, and he does it a lot with Luana as well, Virginia. And there's a scene involving a gun. Like, I wanted to reach through the screen and smack him and snatch that gun out of him, because I'm like, this girl is terrified. But the other thing about that film is like, the other thing about that scene in particular is how intimate partner violence happens amongst young people as well. Like, I think society in general doesn't pay enough attention to domestic violence in young relationships. When they think about domestic violence and intimate partner relationships, they think only adults. They don't think that it happens in teenage relationships, but they do. And you put that into the film, and I think how the way you just like made everything work together, how you tackle all these conversations, I think was fantastic. So applause for that. Because honestly, and I think it's the brilliant thing you did is you show how they're actually all interconnected. Like, the violence from Nicholas's father perpetuated within him and in all his other relationships with other men, and his friend, really the relationship with Gabriel, and then the relationship with Virginia, and the relationship with Luana. Like, and even with Virginia's mother, Patricia, we saw this interesting dynamic between them. But in speaking about the violence, and this is something I do have to mention because it is such a big part of the film, I think, in a very subtle way. And I think because a lot of these things go hand in hand, like the access to guns, like here in Canada, we don't, like, gun laws are more strict than they are in the States. But like, I think what you did in this film, especially for international audiences, you show like the access to guns is very easy there, because like the gun that we see is Virginia's father's gun, and he's a judge. And like, as you mentioned, you were talking about the politics and how like the politicians and judges and police officers are very misogynistic, and like how the government influenced that behavior in them. But then and I think it happens in a one line of dialogue, but it talks about how easy it is to obtain guns there, because Nicholas talks about being familiar with handling a gun, and he talks about he knows how to use a gun. And that one line may seem like a throwaway line, but I think it said a lot about him and about his life and like Brazilian society, where you have a teenager who is intimately familiar with handling a gun, but is also comfortable with using it against this person that he's supposed to be in a relationship with, especially in a sexual situation. Like, he's using it to like, it force her to do, he's sexually assaulted her, and in his mind, he's not looking at that as sexual assault, but that is what it is. So talk a bit about that, because that scene is shocking, but it also kind of broke my heart, because that's also where is in my mind is telling me that Virginia herself was probably abused by Nicholas more than once. And this isn't the first time he's done something like this. It may be the first time he used a gun, but it's not the first time he used violence with her in sex.
Yeah, and it's for me, I love all those characters. I have like this how to say, I think if we are filmmakers and we don't have love for our characters, it's very difficult to make them real. And when I see the film, I know I can see their monstrosity as part of a society. They grew like that, but I can see also they can find a way out of that. And so I look to this monstrosity, me particular, with a caring way because I wanted to feel loved. That I always start from there, and I believe like both actors, they did like a great job in that scene. We work a lot in the rehearsal room, and we talk a lot about that scene, and we did some experimental things with that to be prepared to the day in the set. And the idea when I was building Nicholas, he always say something that it was a joke. I was kidding. He always said that.
And I'm like, it's not a joke, my guy. How is that a joke? Like,
No.
really?
But he grew up listening that from his father. Oh, it's just a joke. Bah. Oh no, it was a joke. And probably his father was very homophobic and very misogynist and always saying it was a joke. I was kidding. And he reproduced that. I don't know if American, Canadian, and other audiences, they are particularly familiar with what Brazil have been through in those last 4 years. But we had like a government was very similar to the Trumpism, to President Trump. We have a president who was trying to imitate Trump. And he was trying to imitate in everything, from the fake news to being trying to, and he did facilitate the access to gun and saying things that are misogynist, being proud of saying things that are misogynist, homophobic, racist. And what is scared that just for years, people part of the society became proud of saying those things too, because when they see in the president saying things like that, they think, okay, now I can say that too. And you guys who are progressive cannot tell me that it's racism, it's misogynist, it's homophobia. No, it's my opinion. And that happened. Now we are starting a process of changing that again with the new government that we have. But that happened. So when we see Nicola's father, he is this figure. He is like from the army, and now he has a political career, and he's pro-gun. And Nicolas, so when he said, "Oh, I know how to deal with gun," and what I think about Virginia, and what I think about many women, that we are. Sometimes we don't know that our pleasure doesn't have to be the man's pleasure. Mm-hmm. You know, because we watch the porn, it's in a very violent way. I also know, studying psychoanalysis, that we have some triggers that come from our childhood, that come the way we were raised, that we can also be excited by that. But that was triggered that we had because of the society we were raised on. But that trigger easily changed to, no, I don't want that anymore. And she says, I don't want that anymore. It starts fun, but it's not anymore. Stop. And he does not stop. And he can easily change from, oh, that's something that's a fantasy, to that's a violence. And I wanted to discuss that. When it's a fantasy, when you have to be aware when it's not anymore, when it became abuse, when it's now a violence. And he's not. For him, it's all the same. And maybe Virginia doesn't know either, because she we can deduce, we can think that she has been growing up with her parents, who are also her mother in different ways of Nicola's mother, but also put in a place that is more submissive to the judge, her parent, her father, that she, in a few lines, demonstrate that she doesn't like that she is not okay with her father. But he is that man that comes and solves. And it's very beautiful. It's a great actor who does that. There is a point that he melts, and it's also beautiful to see that guy who has to resolve in a very quick moment melt. So I don't know. I think it's a movie that try to tell audience, look at this, and then I hope the audience can think, maybe we have to change that.
Yeah. I know we're gonna have to wrap it now, but thank you so much, the both of you, for speaking with me. But before we go, I have to ask you, Mari, what was your thoughts about the film, because you said you saw it for the first time yesterday, and I didn't realize that you had only just seen it before we did this interview. So and like you said, Caroline, like this is, I'm the first person that is interviewing you, not written, but I'm the first person. So like thank you for that honor. But also I need to know like your thoughts on the film, Mari, like the complete, like being in the being the actor in the film is different than being the audience, you know, like you're now seeing the pieces stitched together. You're seeing not only your scenes but scenes that were filmed that you may not have been present for, and it's giving more context to scenes that you were in and things you didn't understand. So like now that you've seen it and you've maybe had a bit more time to process, I didn't think you were probably going to take more time, because I'm still like, even as we were speaking, I'm still thinking about things in the film. Like I didn't even get to all my notes. Like I had a whole bunch of notes in my phone, but like there's still little things that I'm picking up on as you guys were speaking, and I was just like, okay, wait, yeah, and it's like things. So for you, Mari, what are your thoughts on this film?
No, and now after this conversation, I have a whole new movie and I have to watch it again so I can see all these new things. But I have another layer that is, I'm also a movie student. So while I'm watching, I'm like, oh my God, look at that. Look at this choice. Oh my God, the music, all these things going on at the same time. But I was talking to Carolyn, two words for me that are responsible movie and a very elegant movie, because all the choices that she made, I became a huge fan. I was a huge fan, but now, I'm more fan. And there's a thing that there's a long time that I don't see a movie that concludes himself. And it's always an open ending, and you can see what you think, and you can talk with your friends, and everyone finds your ending. And there's a long time that I don't see a movie that concludes himself. So, and I thought that very responsible, because we are talking about heavy things, very important things that need to conclude themselves. You know, you can't leave it open for interpretation. The things that you have to think about when it ends is just what you said. These things have to stop. We have to look for our teenagers. We have to look up to our emotional health. We have to take care of each other. We need to look up for each other, especially after the pandemic times that we were so alone and isolated. We need to take care of ourselves and take care of each other. So 2 words, elegant and responsible. I love it. I really love it. And I think this message, I think that it was very special that there's an end and there's a message.
Mm. Yeah, no, it like as you were saying, and as you were saying, like this film has a lot of heavy topics that it deals with, and like this is going to be like South by Southwest is going to be its international premiere, and I know it's going to spark a lot of conversation, and I hope it does, and that people do pay attention to it. Even just the name of the film, like My Drywall Cocoon, at first I was like but then like it kind of made me think, like how you're saying, like this building basically became a cocoon, right? A cocoon is something supposed to be a moment of a place of metamorphosis, like for a butterfly or moths. But then it also made me think of how a cocoon I thought of it 2 ways. It could be a cocoon for Luana, where she's having a chance to flourish. She'll have her chance to flourish and hopefully become a butterfly after this tragic experience. But then also it kind of became a cocoon that Virginia became trapped in, you know? Like she's not going to be able to leave. Like, so it sadly became kind of like her coffin. But and like there's so much more I wanted to discuss with both of you, but we don't have the time, because I wanted to talk about the clothing, the fashion in the clothing choices in this film are very specific. But I would love to be able to speak to both of you again, because I have many questions and thoughts. But this is like congratulations to both of you. I hope you have a good festival season. And my tips to both of you: pace yourself. Pacing yourself during festival season is important.
Thank you, Caroline. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Yay, you too.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you so much, girls. It was an amazing talking. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
And when it's talk, we're here.
Carolyn, if you need anything else, please let me know, and I'll you can email me wherever you want, and I'll forward to the girls.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I won't. I unfortunately will not be in Austin. I am stuck here in Toronto, so I'm covering the festival virtually. So I'm doing all of my interviews like virtually and watching everything online. But I wish I was in Austin. I wanted to go, but I couldn't make it this year. So I'm not even going to be able to meet you in person. That would have been great.
Yeah, but hope we see in other festivals.
For sure. If you're going to be at TIFF in Toronto in September, I'm going to be there because I cover TIFF every year.
Oh, we hope so.
We would love to.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.